Hello, friends, and welcome to Service of Change's Changecast, your podcast for change. I'm your host, Dennis Nappy II, with Service of Change, where small changes among the masses can have a massive impact around the world. Joel and I have been off the air for a while. There's been a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes with Service of Change. I assure you it is all good. A lot of big announcements tonight. And our show this evening, Paranormal and Supernatural Experiences. Have you had them? Many of us have. Many of us have heard about them. Joel and I are going to delve deep into that issue tonight, and we're going to talk about why this subject is very important to the theme of Service of Change with those small changes. And a change in mindset might be what some of us need out there in this world today. So before I jump into the bulk of the show, let me bring on Joel and see how he's doing tonight. Joel, what's going on tonight, buddy?
Hey, Dennis, I'm just excited for tonight's show. This is going to be juicy, and it's going to be exciting to talk about.
Yeah, we've been wanting to do. We love doing this topic. I'm always saying, I love when we can get into the the paranormal and the supernatural type of stuff. I think it's a fascinating subject for us to delve into, and I with all of my being, I believe that this topic is also very relevant to Service of Change and what we're trying to do. And I'm going to try to make that, I guess, quote-unquote argument tonight and explain, I guess, my thinking on that. But let's get caught up, man. It's been, when was our last live show? It was like 2 weeks ago?
I believe so.
Yeah, we're usually really consistent. We never miss a week. But with the Christmas holiday, and then we had the Christmas sickness run through my house, and then just havoc was wreaked on my website, man. Service of Change was down quite a few times, so I rebuilt pretty much the whole site. I'd say revamped. A lot of my core content was still there, but I got hit with a bunch of malware. I had to change my platforms. There's a lot of stuff I had to do, a lot of technical stuff that's really boring. So I'm not going to bore our listeners with all that stuff, but when you get a chance, please go to serviceofchange.com and check out all the new pages and sites I put up there. I must have built about 15 or 20 pages. Is it that many? Maybe it's like 10. Felt like 15 or 20. But I built a lot of stuff into this website over the last 2 weeks alone. So it was a lot of writing, a lot of setting stuff up. But I enjoyed it. I loved it, man. And it's all about the user experience and the services that we're offering at Service Change. So please go ahead and check that out. Definitely some good stuff going on there.
Yeah, definitely. Check it out.
So thanks. You're a good hype man on that one, Joel.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Throw your hands in the air.
That's a classic. That's a Vito song. Brings us back to being kids. But real quick, I'm trying to push, promote my publishing side of Service to Change. So if you're a writer, please, check that out. You're looking into getting a book published. Lori Latimer, man, she's becoming somewhat of a backbone of Service to Change with all the stuff she does behind the scenes for us. I've said this quite a few times. I'm actually holding her book in my hand right now. It's a beautiful project we worked on. If you follow us, through the Facebook or the Twitter feeds, Lori does a haiku for change every week. And when I started, launching Service of Change and podcasting and all that, Lori said, I want to do something inspirational. How about I do an inspirational haiku every week to inspire people to get out and make a difference? So every week on her way to work, she gets some inspiration. She takes a picture and she writes a 575 haiku and sends it my way. And then I put it together and put it up on the site. And it reached a point where I said, Lori, these are so good. You're so inspirational. Let's make it into a book. And that's what we did. So this is getting ready to come out. We're in the process of planning, the launch and the promotion. A great launch party that we're putting together and some other promotional events. There's going to be more details to follow, as we get closer to the date. So big thank you to Lori. I'm really proud of the work that she's done. I'm really excited for this project. So, but there's information on that. Go to our projects page. You can see everything we have in the works. You have, Lori's project. Ethan, who was a guest on our show, he's writing his own book. He's, about his experiences with special needs and with being bullied and growing up. And then we have, my new project. I haven't made a formal announcement on it yet, but I'm back at the writing game, and I'm excited about this book that I'm putting together. So please check that stuff out. So, how am I doing with my plugs, Joe? Am I killing too much time or what?
No, not at all. It's important.
All right. Yeah, it is, and I've been doing a lot of work on this, but I don't want to bore our listeners either, but this is important stuff. So please check us out, and the best way to support us, I can't say it enough, hit that like button when you see an article come across, or share our stuff. and please like us on Facebook and follow me on Twitter, facebook.com/service of change, and Twitter's Dennis Nappy the second, Nappii. Coming soon to Joel's page. Go to the Changecast page, click on Joel's page. I'm gonna throw his Facebook feed up there and stuff, and it's gonna be good stuff. Great ways to connect with Joel and I, and reach out to us. We want to hear from you. We want to hear the stuff that you have going on. So if you're interested in writing for us, please, there's a link on our blog page. Click the blog, fill out the form, and if you're interested in being guest on the Changecast, there's a form right there on the Changecast page. Fill out that form and reach out to Joel and I. We're always looking for guests. We're always looking for people that have something interesting to say. If you can put it in writing, that's great too. So, all right, that's it, Joel. Let's jump into the show. I mean, you hit me up, I guess last week. You said, hey, why don't we do a supernatural show, right?
Yeah, it just came to me.
Just out of the blue, it just popped in your head, huh?
I just felt like it was. We didn't necessarily have any guests lined up, and I know that you had been kind of having an itch to go, more in depth into that topic, and it's something. I mean, honestly, I think it's really interesting that you said that it's connected to service of change, because I really think that it's connected to, pretty much everything I do too. Like I'm often trying to define what the word spiritual means. You know what I mean? It seems like most of my conversations and most of the things I'm interested have a kind of spiritual component, and that can mean a lot of different things. But it's just, it's that age-old question, like what are we made of? Like, is this world is this world that we see and hear and taste and feel? Is this the only thing that there is?
Yeah, and that's exactly. I think that's the core of at least where I want to start off with tonight and get into. But just I guess to kind of just prove that there is more than we realize. As you hit me up with that, I'm sitting there going, okay, I've got this new book that I'm working on, and I want to involve my readers, my followers, my listeners. I want them to be involved in the writing process. So I'm putting a whole bunch of stuff together for everybody to be a part of this book and this journey of writing it, because it's exciting, and I think it's a great journey to go through on this book. I'm pretty far into it right now. So as I'm thinking about how am I going to start putting this out, because really I'm kind of coming out of the closet with a lot of stuff in the paranormal realm. A lot of people don't put that stuff out there when they've had experiences and encounters with different things, because it's taboo. You don't talk about, oh, that's not real, that's not true, that didn't happen, or you're crazy, you're one of those people. So I've got it up on the website already, but I haven't spoken too publicly about it yet. So I'm sitting there going, how am I going to bridge this gap and start telling people, yeah, you know what? I'm not ashamed to talk about these experiences that I've had, and here it is. And then you hit me up and say, hey, why don't we do a show about supernatural? As I'm having that thought, so I'm like, all right, there you go. There's my validation right there. There's more to this existence than we actually realized. I feel like Joel was reading my thoughts that day.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there too. And so that sometimes I just wanted to add that one of the reasons why people will hesitate is because they don't want to either come off as like one of them, or they don't want to necessarily feed that. There are people that will manipulate other people and just sell the idea that there's, that they have paranormal experiences, or they can connect you to your lost loved ones, and so there is sometimes a little bit of a air of, I don't know, just fishiness. I'm skeptical of some of the stuff because I don't know what people's motives are. But I know your motives are true.
Thank you.
And I know that you come from a good place. So it's like, let's talk about it. I mean, like I said, like this question, like it hovers around so many other questions that people are interested in. And it's like, a lot of people just want to like keep what they believe inside, and I understand because people don't want to necessarily like offend other people, and we kind of live in a society where we're multicultural and we're pluralistic, so we want to kind of like, well, you believe what you believe, I believe what, and we're all okay. And I don't think that talking about it has to violate that. I think you can talk about it in a way that's sensitive to other people's beliefs.
Right. No, you're absolutely right, and I hope that we're kind of bridging that and bringing it more into the area of comfort, because when you're sitting around with your friends, for the most part, when you bring this stuff up, everybody wants to hear about it, everybody wants to talk about it, but it's when you're in a more public or professional setting, people are like, whoa, we don't talk about that. But I think it's so important to have these discussions and to understand, there is a lot of stuff out there that's misleading, and when I talked about which show was it that we did? The conspiracy within the conspiracy, talking about how people were kind of driving us. You saw it with the media, how they were driving the Ferguson issue, with Mike Brown and in New York, trying to get people all riled up. That's going on now with what they call the truth movement. When you really get deep in it, or as they say in this movement now, how far down the rabbit hole you go is a common expression. You do have some people that are misguiding, or they're trying to scare you, and we lose our focus, and my whole point is there is some scary stuff out there, but we don't have to let that fear rule us, because there's also some very beautiful, positive things out there that can counteract that scary stuff with a little bit of understanding, and that's the key. You're going to have to face those fears, and some of those fears may simply be a lot of stuff I believed about myself and the world aren't really the way I thought they were, and that's a scary thing in and of itself. But with knowledge comes power, and I'm going to tell you, I've literally faced my demons and taken the thing that I'm most scared of and stared it in the face, and it terrified me, but I got through it, and I came out it wiser and a lot stronger and a lot better able to deal with some of these things, because I have a different understanding of how maybe things work, how the world works, and it's a fascinating topic to me. So I want to talk a little bit about that stuff tonight, kind of as we get into things. I guess we're already into things, but and I hope that I don't know. I hope that our listeners enjoy it. Like I said, it's I'm kind of stalling here because it's a new subject for me to really come out and jump into, but I'm excited to do it, Joel.
Funny thing is, for like the last couple minutes, you were like distorted totally, and it started to creep me out.
How bad?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. Your different sentences were like being like jumbled together, and it's like they were like overlapping each other. Creepy. It was like, here we go again. Like whenever we start to talk about certain things, it's like somehow there's like bugs in the system.
Well, I listen to, and I know you listen to a lot of podcasts about this type of stuff too. And the subject of the book that I'm writing is they're referred to as the archons, and we've talked about this on our show before. Time and time again, when people discuss these entities on the air, they always have internet connection problems. I can't tell you how many podcasts I've listened to where everything's going fine, and as soon as they mention the subject, they drop the caller, or they lose them, or so there's definitely something to it, and I'd love to see a scientific study, a research study, just to show, to get that data, because people want to see the data, they want to have the proof. It's the scientific mind behind things. Am I still coming in clear, Joel?
No, you started. It was like you were stuttering. It's really creepy. It's just like whatever. Not that this is what's happening, but if it were to be something that was trying to like hijack you, it's like it was taking you and making you sound like dumb. So like not dumb, but like I want to use a politically correct word, like making you sound like gibberish. You know what I mean? And it's
wow. Well, I hope in the playback.
Now you're clear. So.
Okay, I hope in the playback it's clear too. I see we have one viewer. I hope they're still hanging in with us. So thank you, whoever you are. Feel free to hit us up.
Maybe they're not hearing. Maybe they're not hearing it. Maybe only I'm hearing it. I'm hoping that's what's happening.
Yeah, me too. So before I jump into some stuff, let me ask you, Joel. Have you ever had any supernatural experiences or encounters, things you can't explain?
I have so many of those types of experiences that I've had throughout my life. Like I don't even really know where to begin.
Yeah. What was your?
I kind of like one. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I was just going to ask. I was going to try to give you some starting points, but it sounds like you got one. Go ahead.
Well, it's like before I even wanted to get into like the actual experiences, I think like sometimes our definitions, like if we just look at what our definitions are. Like that'll open up. It'll open up the mind. So, and I've thought a lot about this throughout the years. So, you have this idea that, like our brain is inside our head. So, like we're inside, like the activity, like and you can see it. Like you do a brain scan, the electricity's going on in your brain, and it goes down your spine, and then you have all your nerve endings. So it's like you're inside this like flesh case. So if people talk about the paranormal, it's out there. It's kind of like a blob or something, or it's out there, and so when it's kind of easily dismissible by skeptics, because it's like, oh, are you saying there's something out there? And then when people have to kind of try to prove that they had a real experience, they got to kind of prove that it's out there. Mm-hmm. And I've always found that interesting, because who's to say that if it's inside our head it's happening, that it's less real?
Yep.
Like, we're like, oh, it's just in your head.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's the way it operates. It operates by going into your head, so to speak. And then you get into these ideas about what is space and time. Like, time cannot really be infinite. And if it is, we can't conceive of it. Space can't really be, or time can't be eternal, and space can't really be infinite. I mean, I guess it could be, but we can't conceive of it. Like, you just keep going. You keep going spatially. You know what I mean? Like, where do you go? Like, it has to end, just like time. Like, do you keep going backwards in time or forwards in time? So,
well, a lot of what I read about time,
do you understand what I'm driving at?
I do, but a lot of what I read about time is they say time doesn't exist except in our reality, so we can understand and interpret this experience that we're having. Now, I don't understand.
Well, exactly.
I can't rationalize what that would be like without time. I think everything just is. Does that mean everything's instantaneous, or that everything lasts forever? I mean, everything that's ever happened, apparently, I guess the way that physics looks at things, and I'm no physicist. I'm piecing together things that I've read and looked at, but what exists is possibility, infinite possibility. Okay, and a physicist will tell you that. That right now, if you have a marble, sitting somewhere, it has infinite possibility to roll in any direction based on different forces that are going to act on it. Anything can happen. When that marble actually rolls, it chose that possibility. Let's say we pushed the marble, we selected that possibility, and now that reality and that timeline is created as that marble rolls that way. But while that marble's sitting there, every possibility can happen. Therefore, every possibility does exist on some level, because the universe recognizes all of these different things could happen. And that's when you start getting into the theories of the multiverse and different dimensions and all that stuff. Now, that's me, my layman's terms, not being a physicist, because this makes my head hurt when I try to think about that. But I understand that much of it, and I think that breaks down time. And that's kind of where I wanted to start off talking about, if you look at things on the quantum level, because I think, and again, I'm standing on the shoulders of other brilliant minds and researchers, and I've listened to them, and I think I understand them, and can try to break it down in terms that are easier for everybody else to understand, because this hurts my head to understand. But I think it's so important. I listened to a talk. I read his book, one of his books, years ago. Greg Braden, he's the author of The Divine Matrix, and he talks about, the universe is actually a holographic universe, is the big thing that he was putting out, which basically means that no matter how many times you chop it up, it's smaller pieces are still the whole image of the universe is there in each smaller piece. I'm getting sidetracked here, but let's break it down to a simple experiment. Back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, I think it was, there was an experiment done. It was called the double slit experiment. And what they did was, what the scientists did was, they fired a particle. They were firing particles at it was let's say a block or something that had a single slit in it, and behind it was a screen. And then they were able to look at that screen and see the pattern that the particles were hitting the screen. So picture a little marble. That's how we identify particles. They look like marbles. I don't think that's what they really look like, but they had a particle pattern as they would go through this slit. Real easy, right? So then they would put a double slit. They'd put two slits in it, and they'd say, all right, well, what's happening here? So as they're shooting these particles through, they're finding the pattern was not the pattern that a particle, and for your minds, a little marble would make if it would go through one of the two slits. It was the pattern where a wave would make. Picture a wave of water. You splash a wave of water, and it goes through both slits. Okay, and there's a very distinct pattern that it makes. I'll put a video up. I'll link a video on our page to it. Did I just close out of that? Actually, I could probably do a screen share on that. So while I'm talking, I'm going to look for that. So there's a very specific pattern that it's going to make there. So what they're finding is that when you put the single slit, the particle goes through and reacts like a particle. When you have the double slit there, the particle goes through, but all of a sudden now the particle's changing from a particle form to a wave form. And they were very puzzled by that. They're saying, how is this particle changing from a particle to a wave? And they had all these different theories, and they said, you know what? Let's just observe the thing. So they set up again, in layman's terms, they set up a way to observe this tiny particle, and they wanted to see which slit is it going through. Maybe, you know, one's going through one slit, one's going through the other slit, and it's going all these crazy directions. When they went to observe it, they were no longer getting a waveform. The particle then acted like a particle again, and it changed the pattern on the other side to look like a particle. Are you with me so far?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, what science has concluded, and this test has been peer reviewed. This experiment's been done, you know, several times over, is that the particle made a choice once it was observed by human consciousness to turn back into a particle and not act as a wave. So human thought, the mere act of human conscious observation influenced the way that the form of matter that particle was going to take, a waveform or a particle itself. Did I explain that clearly? Because I'm just trying to get it myself.
I mean, well, it's just that there are lots of scientists or people that are familiar with science who they're very resistant to the taking of this notion, and what they call it is attaching it to these woo. They call it woo, because they're kind of mocking it. They're like, woo, you know what I mean? Like what we're kind of doing here. But I think what it drives at is what I was trying to say, that our definitions of what is real, like what is real, that really questions, at least at a subatomic level, like what is real. Because we're using these definitions. Like, is it a particle or is it a wave? I mean, a particle is something that's very different from a wave. You know what I mean? And it's simultaneously being both of those things depending on how you look at it. Or is it become, like you said, like you labeled it slightly different than other people, but what the way you're labeling it is what the way some people labeled it. Did it become once we observed it? Or was it both things at the same time? You know what I mean? There's a
which it could be also. Yes, you're absolutely right. But you know, at the end result was either a particle or a wave pattern that it was showing. Right. So you know, basically the conclusion that they came up with is that matter can act as both a wave and a particle. Maybe it's both at the same time. I don't know. I'm not a quantum physicist, but it can act as both a wave and a particle. And they also said that now, if you think about it, these particles are what make up everything. So on that microscopic level, observation has some level of influence on the behavior of that thing. So in theory, then, observation can possibly affect the outcome of the larger events, right? The macroscopic. If everything's made up of that little stuff, well then, can observation affect that? That's what, you know, that's kind of the conundrum now what people are looking at. I mean, that would make sense, I would think, you know. And I think that science right there is on the road for those people that say, well, I need some proof, of proving the science behind some of this supernatural stuff that we're seeing in this world that some people have experienced, and they say, nah, you're crazy, that's impossible, you know. And I think you brought it up, you know, years ago. You know, people would say, oh, there's no such thing as germs, and then they invent the microscope and they'll say, well, oh, yep, there they are. They're these tiny little things that make you sick, you know. So I think that we're definitely on the road, and people who are, like I said, Greg Braden, man, he nails this stuff down, really explaining the science behind spirit. In all honesty, is kind of what is his niche right now, and it's really fascinating to listen to what he says. But I think this is so important because, and this is where it ties in to service of change. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that you can connect it to, like, you know, from what I understand about modern philosophy starting in like the 1800s, is that they kind of got bogged down in what's called, it's hard to pronounce, but it's like the phenomenology, like the ology of phenomenon. Right. And that like eventually led to like a lot of like discussion about semantics, and semantics are like is the science of signs, and in some respects the science of words, of labels. And it made me think of like the Buddhists. What the Buddhists talk about is everything is connected, and how like they do a little thought experiment when they're talking about it, and they go, you know, like if you chop off somebody's arm, like if somebody chopped off Joel's arm, I'd still be Joel. Right. You know what I mean? So what makes me Joel? Does my arm make me Joel? No, because I can survive without an arm. Well, what if you cut off all my limbs? Well, I'd still have a torso. Yeah. You know what I mean? Well, what if you damaged my brain? Well, So is it my brain? No, you can survive, like people survive in a vegetative state. There still exists. So you get down to what really makes
what makes you
like a thing. Well, what makes a thing a thing? What makes like, because we're talking about ghosts. Well, what is a ghost? A ghost is a thing. You know what I mean? It's an entity. Like, what do you mean by the word entity? And I thought about it when I was in the shower, because I could even take this thought experiment further. Like, what if I isolated a part of my arm? Like, I was just looking at my arm. Now, my arm, you know, I'm looking at my arm like where it meets the wrist.
Right.
So I have my arm and I have my wrist. Well, I also have skin and I have hair. And little tiny little pores and hair follicles. So what if I just isolate? I'm like, and I just gave it a name. Like, this is Buddy. Like, I made a pet name of a little area. Suddenly it becomes an entity because I've assigned it. But what is it? And if you look at it further, in order for it to survive, it has to have oil and it has to have nutrients and it has to come from the blood cells to send it. So, and it's made of different materials. So it's like, what is the thing that we're talking about? Like, what it is. And humans use these terms so effortlessly, but they don't often question, like, what do these terms really mean?
Right. And there's a lot of power behind that. And again, and I think that, understanding how the universe may work a lot differently than we realize. When you talk about cutting off your arm and stuff like that, they did other experiments with the quantum particles where they would take a single particle, cut it in half, and they'd separate them by up to 14 miles. And they found that when they would do something to one particle, the other particle 14 miles away was instantaneously and sometimes anticipating the action of what they did to the other particle. So
non-locality. I think I wrote that down. Non-locality.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. So and this is science that's demonstrating this on the stuff that everything is made of. So there's definitely more to it. And I guess the long short of why I went through this whole detailed explanation and to tie it back to service of change, and there's too much for me to get into in one show to talk about, but if our thought has some influence on reality, and I'm a firm believer in that, and positive thinking, not meaning, oh, I hope everything gets better, I hope everything gets better, because when you're thinking that way, you're actually reinforcing that right now things are bad, right now things are bad. If you sit there and believe things are better, things are getting better, and you have that positive intent in your heart and you're putting it out there, that's when you're going to start to see the change. But if you look at what's on TV, what's on social media right now, what a lot of people who talk about this topic put out is the negativity, the government's taking over, aliens are going to come and wipe out the planet. Like, it's all that negative, fear-based stuff. And what's very scary about that is for the people that buy into that stuff. And I'm not saying there's no truth behind it, but for the people that take it down that negative route, if your thought and observation has an influence on the outcome of reality, then you are being used to manifest a specific reality. And we actually do have that power to change our thought, change our focus, change our intent, and bring about a better reality. But so many people are focusing on that negative crap that's out there. That's what we're getting right now. Is that, you know what I'm saying, Joel?
I totally do. And like, I'll make it even, I think, more simple. Not that it negates what you said, but a lot of people tend to just look at things from, like, the outward manifestation of things. So they're just looking at the results. They're not tracing causation back.
Yes.
So once again, it's phenomenology. So you have a phenomenon, and you need to kind of look at, like, where it originates from.
Right.
And so I'll give a good example. Like, I'm often told in my spiritual practice or whatever, my informal spiritual practice, that I should do the right thing for the right reason. And some people are like, what difference does it make as long as it's the right thing?
Right.
Well, it's not really the right thing if you're doing it for the wrong reason.
You're right.
Do you understand what I'm saying? It'll appear as if it's right.
Right.
But it's the spirit, the motivation, the intention, like you're talking about. Your intention. And Jesus talked about this, and I'm not going to make this religious, but there's just wisdom in what he said, because he said that not what you put in your mouth makes you unclean. It's what comes out of your heart, the overflow of your heart. He's using the heart as a metaphor for your intention. What is your spirit? What are you trying to do?
I don't even know that that's a full metaphor because in this workshop I just watched with Greg Braden, he was talking about the Institute of Heart Math, and these people at this institute have studied that the heart itself has an electromagnetic field that comes out of it that I forget how far it reaches, but it's vast, and that is where the earth itself, between the brain and the heart has a stronger electromagnetic output than the brain. And what they're finding out is that the heart is your key to communicating with the outside universe. That is the language of the universe. That's how you manifest this stuff and interact with the world around you on that deeper, for layman's terms, on a psychic level. People hear psychic, they think, oh, ESP, crazy people. No, but that's really how you interact with the world. It's with feeling and with intent. So, in the words of Jesus that you're talking about, I think he was metaphorically talking about exactly what you said, but I also think he's being real, saying it does come from.
That's
from
very
the heart.
interesting. And you do Tai Chi too, right?
I do, and I focus on all of that stuff, and it really makes a difference. I mean, they showed there's a research study that I found online. I found this when my dad was sick with cancer, where there were Tai Chi practitioners, and they were using the same thing, the intent that comes from your heart, and they were focusing on. This woman had bladder cancer, and she had a tumor, and they had a live camera filming this tumor. And what the practitioners were doing, the Eastern medicine practitioners were doing, is they were putting the feeling in their heart, the feeling of what it's like when they realize the tumor is gone. And they put themselves in that mind state, and they held hands over this woman's bladder and put that intent there, because if you think about it, we have infinite possibilities. So they tapped into the feeling of that possibility, and you watch on the monitor, this tumor shrinks and it completely disappeared. You have to see it to believe it. And if you start studying Eastern medicine and the Tai Chi and Qi and all that, Qigong and all that stuff, it starts to make a lot more sense, and you tie it into the quantum stuff that we're seeing right now. So there's a lot more to it, and I feel like right now we're talking more science than we are supernatural, but I think it's important to understand that baseline and that foundation, because then you can take that and get into it and explain the ghosts and the manifestations that people see and all these weird things that happen. It's not that weird when you start to understand it, and it's not paranormal. It's actually normal. We've just are the ones who have closed ourselves off to it because why? Oh, that's taboo. That's a sin. That's the devil. That's evil. Leave that alone. I'm saying you've been lied to. That's not the case at all. This stuff is very real and it's very natural.
Well, I think that's a good segue into. I'll just put out like a couple stories, and
Sure.
I'll put the caveat that like some of the things I'm going to describe do involve like a classic labeling of these phenomenon, like from a Christian terminology, even though I wasn't quite Christian at the time, but I was kind of using some of those symbols.
Right.
And looking back, I don't necessarily believe what happened was, the devil or even evil, but there were powerful things happening. So, real quick story, like when I was around, 18 or 19, like I started to like get like a little frustrated with always being like the good guy, and I always try to like. I had some girlfriends, but a lot of girlfriends like girls that I liked who were my friends, like they always would friend zone me,
right?
And I just wasn't like, I didn't feel like I was getting the respect that I deserved, and also like my parents were like going through a divorce. There was like a lot of stuff that just kids, and I was a kid, like 17-year-olds go through. You're trying to figure out your place in the world, right. But like I remember thinking I'm gonna be bad. Like, I'm just going to be a bad guy. Like, I'm going to be a bad boy. Like, and it's kind of funny looking back on it, but I was serious. And so I was with my one friend, Dave, and we were walking, we'd gone down South Street, and we had parked, and we were walking along, and I was sharing with him, I'm like, this idea of selling your soul to the devil, I'm like, if you even consider it, haven't you already done it? And this kind of links to what, like, we were just talking about. Like is the action of doing it really doesn't have to be formal, like where you cut yourself. Isn't like the desperation of needing, like kind of like, and I was describing my own desperation that I felt so frustrated by like the situation going on with my parents, and like I was confused about my place in the world. I was about to graduate high school, didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I had had a lot of, bad experiences growing up, a lot of good experiences too, and I was confused. So I'm like, I was kind of keying in without realizing, on the fact that I was desperate enough to like do what some people had labeled like the most worst thing you can do is sell your soul.
Right.
And I'm like, isn't like I hadn't done it, but I'm like, if I've even thought of it, haven't I already like done it? And I shit you not, like at the instant I asked him that, the sky opened up and it started pouring down rain, and we had to run.
Uh-huh.
Like we didn't want to get soaked in this terrible thunderstorm. And like the first like store or like restaurant or whatever we could duck into was this little cafe, and on the wall it was like this New Orleans themed like cafe or something, and on the wall is like this voodoo like imagery, like this hell imagery of all these little demons, like this painting of like hell on the wall.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I turned and looked at my friend. I'm like, it wasn't supposed to rain, and like, what are the chances that I duck into here? And now
Right.
maybe I chose all that, and maybe I chose the moment, like I sensed it was going to rain, so I chose that moment to talk about it. So I was creating my own mythology, and that's
happens
plausible.
sometimes. Does,
That's
but
plausible, but even that in of itself shows the immense power of the subconscious, that I was arranging things. Like I knew that there was, maybe I had walked by there before and knew that was the place, so I chose to park there. So like I was creating my own story
right.
about events.
Well, Joel, I think that, I don't think there's coincidences, in this world. That message was given to me quite clearly, that sometimes something's trying to get your attention, and that could be just you trying to get your own attention and draw it to a particular subject, and I had a situation where I get information sometimes. I get a thought in my head. It's not coming from me, and it'll verify itself. It's teaching me something. So I'm comfortable with it now. I call them downloads. I start getting information in my head. I say, okay, what's this about? And I process everything that I'm getting in my head. I look it up. I'm like, yeah, well, that's the piece I was looking for. It kind of leads me to stuff. It's kind of neat. So when this first started happening, this is a few years ago, maybe 2007, it was 2010 roughly. So I get this information in my head, and it's going, there are no coincidences. There are no coincidences. I'm like, okay, yeah, great, there's no coincidences. What am I supposed to do about that? I didn't fully believe it. My brother starts telling me the same thing. He's like, yeah, there's no coincidences. I'm like, all right, that's a little odd. So we're out in Westchester. We're having a good time. We out at the bars. I'm with, my friend Ian, and Michael leaves ahead of us. He's like, I'm going home. Him and his girlfriend went home, and me and Ian are out hanging out. We leave about, I guess, an hour later. Michael went one direction. We walked our friend home in a complete opposite direction. On our way home to her place, there's a DVD laying on the ground. I pick it up. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. It was a blank DVD. Get back to her place. I pop it in. Joel, it's all this spiritual stuff on this level that we're talking about. I'm like, wow, this is everything I'm always talking about. Like, nobody ever talks about this stuff. It wasn't as popular on the internet back then. So I'm flipping out going, wow, this is so cool. Then I get back, I ended up crashing there. I get back to my brother's place like 6 a.m. the next morning because I had to go home and feed my dogs. And I look on his counter. He found the same DVD on the opposite end of town, Joel. So I was like, and it was all this information we're talking about. And I was like, okay, I get it. There's some kind of higher power, and it's trying to teach me lessons. Yes, there are no coincidences in this life. I need to pay attention to that stuff. So and I've just taken that with me ever since. So I listen to that. I don't even want to call it a voice. I don't hear voices. I just back to my heart. I get things. I've noticed that, if you study the chakra systems, you've got your crown chakra at your head all the way down to your root chakra. There's 7 chakras. The root chakra is down like in your groin area. And if you notice, we process information through each one of those, but we're trained to think, oh, all thinking comes from our brain. Well, we think with our hearts. That's your feelings, and you can let that lead you. When you get upset or you get angry or you're in a fight or flight situation, where's that? It's a gut reaction. It's in your gut. You're thinking with your gut. When you're getting involved sexually with somebody, that's down in your root chakra, in your groin, that's your driving force. So you have different, I guess, thought centers of energy where it processes energy, because all we are is energy, and energy interacts with the world around you. So you can use that stuff, and if you can learn to pay attention to those feelings and those signs, they can guide you. And that's what I always use. I always, as often as I can, I try to go into my heart and shut my brain off. Easier said than done, and just let that guide me, where I want to go, and it's worked out all right for me so far in this lifetime. It's been a pretty good measure for me.
Absolutely. Like, fast forward, like, a few years from that time, like the first story I told, and like I was, running wild. Like, I was still going to school, but I was running wild, and I had this one running partner. We just all over the place, like partying, having a good time, but we were like we were kind of nuts, and I'd begun like kind of like exploring the idea of like Wicca, and I didn't know what it was, and then
Right.
later I like read about it, and I'm like, that's exactly kind of what I believe. But anyway, so my friend had met this girl who worked at a strip club, and she was Puerto Rican and Jewish. So apparently there's Jewish people that live in Puerto Rico, which I didn't know. And she had a friend who was also a stripper. So we're at her house and we're hanging out, and you know, we were, you know, taking we were taking drugs, and like we took some ecstasy pills that were supposedly had like often they were supposedly cut with some kind of hallucinogen. We didn't know, probably weren't even cut with hallucinogen, but whatever. So we're hanging out, and I take this hallucinogen, and you know, obviously, like, I'm very skeptical of what happened after that because I was under the influence. But
Right.
So this girl, kind of, her house was a little rough. Now, she was kind of like living on the edge, and I just remember, like, and I have a little bit of OCD, but I remember like looking at her trash can and just not liking her trash can. Like, I just thought that it was kind of messy, and I just got like this bad feeling from the trash can. So, you know, the night went on, and then she puts on this movie by John Waters called Pink Flamingo, and it's just have you ever seen it or heard of it?
No.
Oh, well, it's just so trippy. It's just so nuts, and it's like trippy in like really strange ways. But so I'm watching this movie, and then, you know, the night goes on, and like I'm like talking to this girl, and I'm like looking at her, and I start like seeing, and I don't like I'd taken lots of hallucinogens at that point, and like I'd always been told there was going to be all sorts of hallucinations, like literal things you see, and it never really happened, like except for like you would get little trails, like if, you know, somebody would wave their finger past your eye, you would see like, you know, you would see trails from the finger, and different lights would appear differently, colors would appear differently. I started seeing like literally like energy coming off of her head. I don't know what any other word to describe it.
Like
and
an aura.
I just looked at her and smiled in this way because I believed in this idea that there was energy. Like I was like exploring this idea that I hadn't yet like understood that other people believed it and called it Wicca. But I was just looked at her. I'm like, you have powers. And like I said it like that weird way. And she goes, come here. And she takes me into the kitchen. And she opens her freezer. And inside her freezer are these cups that are turned upside down. And she goes, I practice Santeria, which is a type of Puerto Rican voodoo. And she goes, these are cups of people who I don't like, and they drank from them. And I put them in here. And she closes it. And then she takes me, and she was showing me, she was an art student at the Art Institute. She starts showing me some of her artwork. And her artwork is using her own menstrual blood.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is an ancient practice where they would anoint doorways with their menstrual blood. And she was like, I've anointed this doorway.
I'm reading a book about that right now. Yeah.
And how did I know that, Dennis? How did I know that she had powers? Well, did I just take a leap?
You felt it. You interpreted that energetic, because your normal waking reality mental barriers were shut down. You know,
Exactly.
I took a course when I was in high school with my mom, and this is relevant to exactly what you're talking about. It was a psychic development course, and it was just a woman. She was a practicing, she was practicing Wicca, and she taught us all about, just being psychic and what it's like, what to look for, how to do it. And one of the things we talked about was reading auras, and she tried to teach us how to read auras. So I used to go home. I used to practice all the time reading auras. I would stare in the mirror at myself, and I was able to get a thin white light that I could see around my body and other people's bodies if I sat there and focused long and hard enough. So, I thought it was pretty cool, but I really couldn't do much with it. Fast forward, I guess, 2008, 2009 time frame. I'm sitting in grad school. I'm exhausted. Boom, all of a sudden my professor's glowing green all around her. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? I rub my eyes, I look away, I look back, boom, there it is again, glowing green, and I notice that this starts to pop out more and more, as time goes on. And some people, I'll look at them, and it's like they've just been hit with some kind of radioactive material, and they're glowing. And I rub my eyes, I look away, I look back at them, and it's still sitting there. Well, I never really understood what the colors mean. I've read countless books on, what do these aura colors mean, what this and that. Everybody has their own interpretation. I can never read them. Well, I guess about 2 months ago, I was speaking to somebody I know, and I'm talking to him, and boom, all of a sudden, I start seeing this horrible-looking aura, and I break into, I guess, an analysis of it. I start sitting there going, wow, you're really stressed out at your job, and this is what's going on. And I start breaking down like exactly what's wrong at work. I don't know where this information is coming from, but I know this person, so I could just be familiar with their life. And then I said, are you sick? Do you have something? I'm seeing something going on in your chest. What's up with your chest? I don't like what's in your chest, but you're going to be okay. But there is something in your chest. You have a lot of stress on it, and I'm just kind of like automatic speaking, I guess, as I'm looking at it, because I'm seeing a black cloud, and then I'm feeling what I felt in myself was it's in the chest area, and this person confided to me, yeah, I have to go get a biopsy done, basically.
Wow.
And everything ended up being okay, but that was exactly what I was seeing, and they were like, look, I wasn't going to tell anybody that. The only reason I'm telling you is because you apparently just saw it.
Wow.
I was like, yeah, well, you're going to be okay, but so that type of stuff is possible. Now I can't do it all the time, I can't control it, but lately I think the more open I become, the more I am starting to pick up on things from people, but like when you're out at work or something, you're like, you don't want to sit there and start analyzing people and breaking them down, because God forbid you're wrong, then you look like an idiot. God forbid you're right, then you freak everybody out, and then they want you to do it all the time. And I can't do it all the time. I can't do it on command. It's just sometimes it just happens, and I see stuff, So, but it's pretty cool.
And the thing that I would say is that for me, like, morality always comes first, even back when I was doing wrong things. So I'm always looking for the most obvious example or obvious explanation, because if you really care about people, you don't want to lead, this is what I was saying originally, you don't want to lead them astray. So if something's going on that I can't explain, I'm not going to jump to the supernatural. I want to look for the most obvious cause, because I want to help the person. Same thing in my own life. If something's going on with me, I'm going to look first to the most common sense, materialistic materialistic based causes, because I want to get the answer. I'm very practical, but there was no way I could have known that about that woman. And even recently, a couple years ago, I was delivering pizza, and we have these little instructions that are at the bottom of our slip, but they stay there. So if somebody needs change for a $100 bill, or they want you to call them, it's hard to sometimes determine whether this was tonight that they wanted that, or if it was the last time. It could have been 3 years ago. So sometimes the counter girls put dates on there, sometimes they don't. So I'm taking this delivery, and it goes back door. And I'm like, I don't know whether I should go to the back door or should go to the front door. I'm just going to go to the back door. So I go to the back door, and I'm looking around, and then the woman comes out on her balcony, and she goes, I'm like, hey, did you order? She's like, yeah, but I didn't tell anybody to go to the back door, but I sensed that you were here. Hold on, I'm going to come down to the basement. So she comes down the basement. It's a black lady, and I'm like joking with her. She's like, I didn't even hear anything, but I just sensed you were outside. I'm like, well, yeah, I sometimes do the same thing. I kind of just send my energy out, maybe try to communicate with people and hope that they come out, because I get nervous being back in an alley and I'm trying to do a good job. I'm like, but sometimes people think I'm crazy when I say that, because I think I'm kind of psychic. And she goes, I don't think you're crazy. I do this for a living. I read people's auras. I'm a psychic. I'm like, and I don't throw that out to everybody. I kind of I'm careful about who I say that kind of stuff to, but it was just I knew that she
thought you were comfortable.
Yeah, and it was really strange. It was just, she was a kindred spirit, and I knew it, and she knew it.
I have a friend of mine, and we used to do it all the time when we were kids. We hung out up in the Poconos, so we'd see each other all summer long, but then when we'd go home, we wouldn't see each other. And we had a thing, and within 24 hours, it always worked. If we needed to talk to the other one, we'd start putting it out there. Call me, call me, call me, call me. I need to talk to you, I need to talk to you. And every time we tried it, within 24 hours, the other one would call. Whoever was asking for the phone call, the other one would make that call. And I mean, it's without fail. We used to do that for years. We don't really put it out there anymore just because we're busy with kids and wives and husbands and all that stuff now. But that definitely is a reality, because if you think about how we are all connected, on an energetic level, and it goes deeper than that. I'm not even going to get into that subject tonight, but there is a connection between all of us that everybody has the potential to tap into for anything, for communication, for for information, for knowledge. Edgar Cayce talked about the Akashic records. The research by Robert Monroe at the Monroe Institute talked about tapping into these sources of information out there, at different levels of consciousness, and this has all been verified. We just don't accept it yet, I have my theory as to why, but but I think that's something, again, bringing it back to service of change. We can change our understanding of reality, and we may need to let go of belief, as much as it stings, as comfortable as our belief is, as our religion is. You don't have to change who you are. Yeah, or lack of religion, but it's about how you approach the world. And I found that a lot of times when I speak with people that are very religious about it, they just completely shut it down. And I'm not knocking religion at all, because I think it does a lot of beautiful things, but sometimes it puts a ceiling above us where we can't go any further, and that's a shame, because that is being used. With the way I was raised as a Catholic, that fear base was being used. That's the devil. Stay away from that. Well, if I wasn't tapping into these feelings and these strong intuitions that I have, there'd be a couple times that I'd be dead. There'd be a lot of people
Absolutely.
that I would not have helped as a cop, as a teacher, as a friend, where I've said, ooh, I need to go down this way, or I need to call this person today, or this person, something's wrong. Let me just keep bugging them until they open up, and then they're like, yeah, I'm going to go home and kill myself today. I mean, that's happened to me, where I've pushed people because I feel it. I don't know it. Nobody tells me, so my point is, open yourselves up, and I guess this is a good segue. In 2005, I in trying to understand all of this, because let me take a step back. when ever since I was a kid, I'd have experiences where some nights I'd wake up and I'd be wide awake, and I'd be laying there in my bed, and then I realize all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I can't move. Like, I can't move my arms. If the TV was on, I could hear the TV, but I can't move. And then all of a sudden, I feel a presence next to me, and I'm freaking out. Like, what the hell? And it was just this horrible, menacing, terrifying feeling that there's someone or something standing next to my bed, and I can't move. And then for whatever reason, all of a sudden, 9 times out of 10, I just fall asleep, and wake up and have foggy recollection of these things. So 2 things I'll go into briefly to expand upon this a little more. When I was still a teenager, I'm having one of these experiences, and I'm going, this isn't real, it's a dream, it's a dream, it's a dream. And a hand reached out and rested on my chest. Scared. If I was scared then, that just made me blind with fear. I don't remember any more of that experience, but something was there, something was intimidating me. Now, take it a step further, I'd go downstairs the next morning, and all I'd say to, members of my family was, anybody have a weird night last night? And somebody always would say, yep, something strange was going on in the house last night. I had a friend sleep over one night, and the next day they're telling me, oh my gosh, I woke up, I couldn't move last night, I'm calling for your name to help me, I'm saying, oh my gosh, something's in the room, and I said, okay. So there's validation for me that something was happening, and then with the invention of the internet, years later, after I drew many of my own conclusions, and this is what I talk about in my new book that I'm working on, I start realizing people have had these experiences, and people are drawing the same conclusions that I drew, not because somebody else told me something, not because I saw something on TV, because I experienced something and I drew my own conclusion about it. And that's what my book's talking about. And up to 2005 now, I started a support group, and that group was called Truth Seekers. And it was designed. I think I got a ton of benefit out of it. I guess there's about 30 people that eventually joined the group. It was one of the Yahoo groups, and we would just talk about, hey, have you ever experienced this? Here's what I'm dealing with. This is really scary. And we'd pull resources, we'd share videos, we'd read books, and that was very helpful. So I've kind of given Truth Seekers a rebirth through the Service of Change site. There's actually a tab for Truth Seekers on there now where, I'm going to start putting up blog posts of this nature, of this topic because I think that it's so important. And you know, I have on my Truth Seekers YouTube page, there's you know, well over 100 videos of all stuff that I think is relevant to everything that we're talking about. They're good videos. Every day I watch a different, or I listen to a different podcast or YouTube video or something, and I save everyone, you know, into different categories on my YouTube page. So it's just a wealth of resources there. But you know, if you go to our projects page, you'll see, you know, a link to the, you know, it's called the Archons, and it's a breakdown of kind of a little bit about what my new book's about, and it's about these experiences that I've had throughout my entire life, and the understanding that I've come to is that there is more to reality than we perceive it to be. There's more to human beings. There's more to who we are. And there's other stuff out there that I think that a lot of people aren't prepared to look at or to recognize. And it's a very scary thing when I first figured this out, that basically, wow, I'm not at the top of the food chain like I thought that I was. But the more I've faced my fear and understood it, I realized it's actually not that bad, because there's something I can do about it. It's not the end of the world. It's the end of the world if I live in ignorance and I don't, and I just allow this to happen because I'm too afraid to look at it.
And I think...
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and I think that is kind of the disservice that certain religious denominations can do, because the thing about it is, I do believe that, like, some of them, they're accessing some of their own resources to help them deal with these phenomenon.
Right.
But if you don't quite follow their path, you're not going to be able to access them. So then when they tell you just to avoid all this stuff, they're forgetting that it's not avoiding you. So here's the final, not the final, but this is one, like, I picked like 3 prominent stories from my life, and and this last story is once again, could be explained by coincidence, but I think it's very important to the point I'm trying to make, because, you know, both the believers and the non-believers, they both put a cap on what we can try to understand. So people that are materialists, who are atheists or whatever, just like, that's all a bunch of nonsense. So once again, they're doing the same thing maybe that the religious people are, and they're they're just saying, just don't worry about it. But once again, not worrying about it is not going to stop it from worrying about you, so to speak. So whatever that is, it's worrying about. So I, you know, once again, back in my wild days, like, I conceived a child, my daughter, she's now 15. So 15 years ago, you know, I had a newborn. I was acting out. I was living crazy. My daughter's mother wasn't, you know, it wasn't working between us. And I'm not going to go through the blame game or whatever. It was mostly my fault, but she wasn't without error either. But we got into it, and I tried to make the relationship work, and it wasn't working. And then my daughter got thrown in the middle, and I handled it kind of immaturely and stuff like that. But anyway, I had all this anger at my daughter's mother. So, and this is what I'm talking about. The anger was there. What happened next was simply a manifestation of the anger. Now, if I just ignored the anger, bad things still could have happened, and they did. But instead, I ritualized the anger. And actually, by ritualizing the anger, I learned something about the anger. So a Christian would have come along and said, don't do what you're about to do, because I cast a hex on my daughter's mother, basically. And I'll describe what happened. And they would have told me, just don't cast the hex. But if I hadn't casted the hex, I wouldn't have been getting rid of the anger. I would have just been bottling, and it would have came out. Maybe I would have, like, done something worse to her. Maybe I would talk bad about her, or cursed at her, or told bad things to my daughter about her. Like, you wouldn't have been getting rid of the energy that preceded the hex. You understand what I'm saying? And same thing with people who would be like, oh, the hexes don't exist. Like, no. Instead, I followed my instinct, which was a bad instinct. I had bad motives. So I had a picture of her, and I put a dart in her mouth. This is what I did. That was my spell. Well, she calls me. We talk like maybe a week later, and she came down with Bell's palsy, and it started with a cold sore. Cold sore starts in your mouth, and then it spreads and paralyzes half of your face.
Wow.
So I put a dart right in her mouth, on her lip. And she ended up with a cold sore. Now, she recovered. Some people don't recover, and they end up with no movement in their face for the rest of their life. And at the time, I thought it was funny, because I'm like, look, I have powers. It wasn't funny at all. But I learned that having that bad intention could have power. Now, maybe this is just a coincidence. But either way, now, if I'm going to use energetic magic, whatever you want to call it, people laugh at me, oh, you can't use magic, whatever. I'm just talking about my little rituals, which aren't any less valid than any religion's rituals. The rituals that I do to try to orient my energy, I have an altar, I pray for people, I send good energy, whatever you want to call it, prayer or cast a white magic spell, whatever. They're all just different words for the same phenomenon. I'm very careful not to put that energy out there, like, because I learned something in that. I'm like, wow, maybe this caused this, and I don't want to put. She didn't deserve this.
Right.
And I was humbled by that experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Joel. You know, there's something to, and what it comes down to is intent. And with that intent, we do have the power to manifest certain things, and it's that level of raw emotion that you can use. I mean, that's what they talk about, when somebody is experiencing a poltergeist, things getting thrown off the shelves, things getting thrown off the walls and stuff. It's usually when a young child is going through puberty. They've linked poltergeist. It's just the raw emotions of young kids as they're growing up.
That's the thing. It's funny because people say it's caused, but we don't know where the causation is. We know that they're correlated. So it's adolescent energy that's correlated with these phenomena. It's the same thing I heard that there's electromagnetic in areas where there's a lot of electromagnetic radiation emanating naturally, so to speak. They say naturally. You will have these experiences. So some skeptics try to say, well, it's just the electromagnetic radiation. Well, once again, I'll counter, well, maybe it's just correlated.
Maybe it's drawing, whatever is on the other side or a different aspect.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you think about it, we're virtually blind and deaf in the universe. We, out of, what is it, like 99.5% of the stuff that exists, we are not capable of perceiving without technology. So for us to sit there and say that doesn't exist, I don't see it, well, you're a jackass. I'm sorry, I usually don't talk like that on the show, but really, because you can't see it, you are like a mole in the dirt. That we can't see most of what's out there in the size of the universe. We're going to sit here and say that doesn't exist because I can't see it, and that's the greatest downfall. That's the arrogance of man, and that's, I think, what causes so many problems, because we believe if I can't touch it, well, then it's definitely not real. Well, you're going to be in for a rude awakening one day, and just real quick, just to talk about coincidences again. You sit there and talk about, you have an altar and you have all these rituals and stuff that you do, I didn't know that about you when we linked up, and I have a very similar practice. I mean, I have my own altar. I light candles, and I have my own little, prayer spells, whatever you want to call them, that I do. That my path is very similar to that. When I do things, and I think it's just neat coincidence that you and I have that same path. We put that same energy out there. That hey, here's our goals with what we want to do. For me, it was through service to change. For you, it's just your means to express yourself. And we ended up being brought together, and we walk a very similar path. So, again, there's, in my opinion, I take that as validation that there's something more than just, kind of what we come to expect in our everyday lives. So, running, just about out of time. We're just about over an hour. So, go ahead and finish your thought, whatever you're going to say.
I just wanted to say there was this one thing, and I don't know if maybe any of our listeners can help me with this. And I did read an article that helped me answer it slightly about like the 5 senses. And actually, I read that actually now they're starting to say there's more senses than just 5, that those are kind of arbitrary, like...
Yep, that's the physical senses.
Yeah, but I had read about this thing called mere arousal when I was in college in a psychological book. And mere arousal is talking about your nervous system getting engaged in the presence of other organisms. So it's to prepare for fight or flight.
Right.
And so they had done these studies with mice, and mice could be separated, and I could be wrong, maybe I read this into it, but my understanding of what they were telling me in the book was that the rats would be separated. They would be close to each other in close proximity. They use the word proximity, but they weren't able to necessarily perceive that the other rat was nearby because maybe it was soundproof, so they couldn't see the other rat or the other mouse. They couldn't hear it. They couldn't smell it. It was totally like cut off. But their nervous system would kick in as if they were able to perceive the other rat because it's a survival thing.
Yes.
And how is that explained scientifically? How did the mouse know that the other mouse? And I started looking around and understanding human beings in this sense, and they talk about animals knowing when there's going to be like natural disasters. That there's these mechanisms.
There's shifts in like the electromagnetic field. Some people think that's what they're tapping into, and that I mean, that's a means of communication,
Exactly.
And I'm not going to get into it tonight, but I'm getting ready to post an article within the next week or so about plants, and it's going to sound. Here's a teaser for you, okay? But there's scientific documented evidence that has even been done by the popular show MythBusters that prove this to be true. Plants pick up on people's thoughts. when you hook them up to certain devices, like i.e. a polygraph test, these plants, when the person thinks, I'm going to set you on fire, and intends to do it, just prior to them setting that plant on fire, the plant's needles spike, and they're registering, oh my gosh, I'm about to be killed. So there, and it goes much deeper than that. But there's an energetic communication that takes place that plants are picking up on. It just wowed me, and it totally changes my way that I perceive the living world around me. I'm the idiot. I'm the blind one.
Chills listening to that, because I've thought about like what the great teachers say, and it's been made into a Hallmark card where it's like, love everybody. And people are like, you can't love everybody, because people don't understand love. They confuse it for familial love or romantic love.
Right.
They're talking about like your intention towards the world around you, and it takes so much work, because you can't love people that are hostile toward you, because you might have to protect yourself from them. So you gotta and you have to do. This is why the spiritual traditions are, and they're being neglected by so many people, really troubles me, and that's why I'm constantly advocating online for them. And people think that I'm defending right-wing Christians or homophobia, and I'm not. I'm just saying that like in my experience, that you have to do a lot of work to really exert that kind of the opposite of what they were exerting towards that plant. The opposite.
Right.
The opposite of that is there's Greek words called agape, or and there's a word called namaste, where you're the intention that you put out into the world, and you have to be good with yourself in order to do it.
Right.
Like, you can't be annoyed by traffic. You can't be annoyed when people let you down, because that all kicks in all your defenses, and then suddenly the agape goes away because you're trying to protect yourself. You're trying to like, you have to have orderliness in your own spirit and your own surroundings in order to best optimally send that energy out, so that you're sending love to the plants.
This, beyond the plants, this experiment was done and repeated, and I got to find a link for it, but during one of the Iraq conflicts, they had people that were trained to hold that feeling in their hearts. I forget how many people it was, but they tried it with varying numbers of people, and they found that at the time that was set for these people who were in the combat zone to invoke these feelings, to feel that feeling of peace in their hearts, that the fighting stopped, nobody died, no terrorist incidents happened. And then when they would stop holding that feeling, the incidents would start up and the fighting would start up again. They did this experiment, I forget how many times. So there is something to that. The energy that you put out through your intention in your heart has that impact. And it's this stuff that we're talking about, my relationship to the world, knowing that, just for this example, a plant can pick up on how I'm feeling and what I'm doing. That's how I try to approach my life. That's what I'm coming from with Service to Change. All these impacts I want to have, not me, but I want to see change in the world, the positive change. I know it's possible. I believe it's possible. But I'm hoping that maybe I can provide that one piece of information, that motivation that somebody else, can take from it and go out and make that difference as well.
Exactly.
So we're just about running out of time, but I want to draw people's attention. There's a screenshot up right now for it, but if you enjoyed this topic, you have an interest in this topic, I'm putting back up the Seeker newsletter. It's gonna be a monthly newsletter. I'm gonna be giving a lot of updates on some fun facts and stats and information about my upcoming book. I mean, it's gonna be probably about a year-long project with this book, but it's gonna be a fun project, and I'm gonna have all this type of stuff that I'm gonna share regularly. There's a Truth Seekers Facebook page, that just got up. Please like that. I put a video up there just about every day, if not more. A couple times a day. There's a Twitter feed, again, same thing. Truth Seekers, and it's spelled TruthSeikers. It's spelled incorrectly simply because when I went to apply for the Yahoo group, somebody had a Truth Seekers group spelled the correct way. So I said, well, I like the name anyway. I'm going to modify the spelling, and it's just kind of stuck with me. And I like it that way better. So check it out, though. Go to servicechange.com and click on the Truth Seekers tab, and there's a subscription for the newsletter right there. It's a free newsletter. I'm not going to spam you with stuff. I'm not going to sell your information. I want to get the word out about this project that I'm working on, because I think it's so important that we have a better understanding. Even if you disagree with me, I hope that it challenges your thoughts, and I hope that you come back at me and say, you know what, Dennis, look at it this way, try this. I'm looking for more information on it. This is my passion. This is what I'm always trying to learn more about. So please consider subscribing to that newsletter and definitely checking out our social media feeds. I'd really appreciate that, because I say the more the merrier. I want to hear from you. So that's pretty much all I have, Joel. Any final thoughts from you?
No, I mean, I just echo what you just said about even if people disagree, because I think skepticism is part of being a moral person, and I'd said that earlier in the show, where we have to differentiate between the stuff that just isn't real. And I know I alluded to the idea of, like, even our ideas about what is real and what is not real are problematic, but we need to differentiate badly motivated stuff that is a lie, that has the intention to deceive or to confuse,
right,
or even people that are they're confused, they're lying to themselves, so they're believing in something or believing something happened because they're trying to ignore maybe the core issue that's going on. We need to be able to differentiate between that and the other stuff, because there are a lot of confused people that like seek out this kind of stuff, and they seek it out because they're lacking love, or they have an addiction problem, or they're lonely. You know what I mean? So, like, not that it's wrong for them to seek out this stuff, but maybe that they're missing the forest for the trees. So skepticism is always incredibly important, because
right,
if the motive is to simply help people and help them see the truth for them, then the skepticism, if it comes from a good place, you know?
Yeah,
So.
no, you're absolutely right, Joel. We welcome that. And just to piggyback, one more thing on that is, when you're looking at some of that stuff, we have that deception, that stuff out there. For me, a good measure is, if you're listening to some of this information, as exciting and fantastic as it is, if somebody's trying to scare you or trying to encourage you to fight something, fight the system, fight the power, I'm not saying there's never an appropriate time to fight. I mean, I myself will tell you there's certain times that you have to fight. I'm going to talk about in some of my experiences how I stood up, I took a stand and fought. But if somebody's main goal is to get you to fight, to get you to be violent, or to scare you, then you might want to start looking at different sources, because that's probably an indication that they're leading you down the wrong path. And they may not even realize it, because for the longest time I was in the mindset, we got to fight, we got to rise up, this is ridiculous. But the more I find out, we don't have to play that game. We don't have to be a part of that system. Just do something differently, and it will make all the difference in the world. You don't have to go down that road. You don't have to follow that path of fear. So, Joel, if you have nothing else, I'm going to go ahead and close out the show. That's all right.
Do it.
Okay. Hey, I also, we got 2 viewers right now, man, and I mean this sincerely. Thank you so much for your support. Please sign up for our newsletter. I'd love to hear from you. Check us out, serviceofchange.com. Check our new tabs out for publishing. Teachers, there's a great teacher free classroom management course on there for you. As always, check out our books from Service of Change. That definitely goes and supports the show and everything that we're doing at Service of Change. And please check out the Seeker newsletter at serviceofchange.com/truthseekers. It's been a great show. I really enjoyed this. Thank you to Joel for being a part of it. Lori Latimer, I love you. You're doing great things. I'm excited about your book coming out. Ethan, we got your website, your blog page up, and your newsletter's ready to go. So we'll talk more about that in future episodes. And again, to our listeners, thank you so much. Please like us, please share us, please help us get the word out. We need your help to to kind of draw attention to this movement of positive change that we're trying to inspire. So remember that small changes among the masses can have a massive impact around the world. Be that change. Thank you.